So real quickly, this is makingthedifference.org. This is one of the sites that we just mentioned, and this is a really good place if you're just starting this. It's going to have really good base of information, expands upon a lot of the things that I've touched on in the presentation today. Here is an example of an agency site. And remember, I mentioned that if you are really interested in a particular agency, you might want to go directly to their website. This one is just one example of many. It's the Department of State site, but when you go to a site, you want to look for the Careers tab, or the Jobs tab, or Employment tab, something like that. And when you find that, that will usually direct you to different opportunities. Now, some agencies, and I use state because I think they're a really good example, they have not only a career page, but they also have a students page. Not all agencies will have that, but that's another thing where if you're going to the site, you want to sort of dig a little bit deeper and see if they do have a separate page for students or recent grads. Okay, so we've talked about, benefits of federal employment. We've talked about, the pay system, programs for students and recent grads. I want to spend now the rest of our short time talking about the government's primary job site and giving you tips for submitting a quality application, whether you're applying to a student position or you're applying to what we call just an entry-level position on USA Jobs, and there are thousands of those available as well. So this is what the site looks like, usajobs.gov, and you'll see here, this is where the students section, that's where you can get to the students information, and also the veterans. There's a separate veterans page. It'll take you to fedshirevets.gov. Okay, so you can see here you can do really a very basic search. This is just the home page. You can put in a keyword and an example of where you want to work. Now let's just say we did that. Let's just use an example. Let's say you want to work in an economist position in Washington, D.C. If that's all you put in, this is what's going to be displayed. It's going to be a listing of all the jobs that are posted that match that criteria. Now, on the right side here, you can refine your results though, and I would encourage you to do that. You can refine it by salary, grade level, agency. At a minimum, I would encourage you all to refine it by the grade level using sort of the criteria that I gave you in the beginning. So if you're a recent grad, narrow that to the GS 5 or 7 level, okay? Now, let's say that you were really interested in one of those positions, okay? If you click on it, this is what's going to be displayed. I know that it's difficult to read, but this is what a job announcement will look like. And it has 5 different tabs: overview, duties, qualifications, benefits, and then how to apply. Now, in that overview section, you're going to find a lot of information, and you're going to find the series and grade level. That's where you want to see if it's advertised at the right grade level based on what we talked about earlier. And down a few, you'll see the promotion potential. Okay, so this one's advertised at a GS 12, but it has promotion potential to a GS 13. So just pay attention. You want to pay attention to those things. Another thing really important is that there's a little tab here that says who may be considered. If you've never had a federal job before in what we call the civil service, you want to make sure that you're applying to jobs that are open to the public, or it might say U.S. citizens, something like that. If you see something that says status candidate, merit promotion, that means that you have had to have had a civil service job in the government in the past, or you're a current federal employee. And that's another one that can really be sort of an easy thing that could weed you out if you didn't know that. So, if you haven't had a federal job before and maybe everything else matches up with your interests, it's at the GS 5 and 7, but if you're applying to it and it says status candidates only, you won't be found qualified for that position. So really make sure that you're paying attention to that. Another great resource for you, and you might even want to do this especially if it's your first time going to USA Jobs, is spend some time in the Information Center. Okay, this is going to give you again, a lot more in-depth tutorials and information about a lot of the topics that I'm touching on today. So a really, really good resource for you. Now, let's say that, okay, you have searched for federal jobs. You really think that you want to start applying for things. What do you do at this point? There's a couple things to get you started that you'll want to do. The first thing is that if you haven't already done so, you'll want to create a USA Jobs account and profile. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. You'll also want to make sure that in that profile, you either create or upload your resume. And then for each application that you apply to or each job, you want to make sure that you're answering the questions if they ask you any, and that you're submitting that application by the deadline. Now remember, this is important because even though some of the student programs that I mentioned earlier might not be posted on USA Jobs, this is still a really great resource because there are thousands of jobs at any given time available on USA Jobs that you could qualify for, particularly with a bachelor's, master's, PhD, and so on. So I think it's going to be really important for you to create a profile and create an account because a lot of federal jobs are going to be on this site at any given time. Now this is what the USA Jobs account looks like, and I'll just talk about a couple different things. You can see that you can store up to 5 resumes in the USA Jobs system. You can either use, they have a resume builder, so it'll help you build your resume. You can use that, but now with hiring reform, you can also have the option of uploading a resume in your own format. So you can store up to 5 resumes here. You can also save other documents, so maybe you want to upload a transcript, so you'll have that there. And you can also use what we call saved searches. So maybe there's something that you're a particular search that you're looking for frequently. Maybe you want to look for positions in human resources in San Antonio at the GS5 level. You can create that as a saved search, and so anytime a job posts that meets that criteria, it will automatically send you an email with a link to that job announcement that posted. Now this is an example of what the USA Jobs resume builder will look like. You can see it'll prompt you for different sections. I want to spend just a little bit of time on this because I think whether you're using the resume builder or if you're using a resume of your own format, there are some general things that are going to apply. My colleagues actually after this are doing a whole session on how to create a solid resume for a federal job. So if you have the opportunity to attend that, I encourage you to do so. But the condensed version that I'll give you is that you'll often find that when you're applying for a federal job, your resume will need to have more detail than what you might be used to when applying for the private sector. And not just detail, but you really want to make sure that you're tailoring your resume to the application, or I'm sorry, to the job announcement or the type of job that you're applying for. And that doesn't just mean putting in keywords. It means really looking at what the qualifications for the job are, what the duties of the job will be, and reflecting in your resume how you exhibit those or how you'll be able to do them. And just, it doesn't have to be, a lot of times people say, well, I don't have this particular skill in a job that I've had. And I said, well, think broader than that. Think about your academic experience. Think about your volunteer and community work. Think about your extracurricular activities that you do. Think about all of those things, okay? And then try to find how you've done that in some capacity and highlight that on your resume. And also, when you're describing the skill or the particular work, take it a step further and try to show not just what you did, but then try to show that the result that you achieved from that. I can tell you that will really, really help, and it will really help set you apart, because it is much better to do a few quality applications with tailored resumes than to do a lot of applications that just use the same resume for every position. will really, really help you. And again, my colleagues will share a lot more information about that during the 10:30 session. So sort of as we sort of close up here, just a few other takeaway points. We had a couple questions about different, about the veterans or military service. If you are a veteran or have military service, if you have past, current, or federal employment, if you were in the Peace Corps, if you have a disability, these are all things that you want to note because those could help qualify you for special preference in the federal hiring process. So just a really good thing to note. I know that our Deputy Director at OPM is giving a session about federal employment for students with this, or for students or individuals with disabilities. And again, my colleagues down in the booth downstairs have information about veterans hiring as well. Okay, so just a few other closing points. Just remember when you submit your application, you want to make sure that you're following those instructions and the how to apply closely, just to make sure that you've attached any documents they want you to attach, you've answered any questions that they asked of you, so that you're really submitting a complete application. Now, what happens after you hit the submit button? Because I often hear, the frustrations of individuals that say, I feel like this is a black hole. I feel like I submit this and then I never hear anything back. So again, I think the Hiring Reform Initiative is really designed to combat that so that you don't encounter that kind of feeling. But I think it will be helpful just to share with you what happens on the other end. What happens when you click submit? Now, when you do that, you'll get a notification that your application was received. And as I mentioned earlier, with hiring reform, agencies have to notify you not only when it's received, but at those additional 3 points during the whole application process. Now, when they'll then take a look and they'll look at all the applications that they received, and they're going to go through and they're going to see who meets those minimum qualifications. So this is where, if you are an individual with a bachelor's degree and you applied for a GS-13 position, they're going to take those individuals out at that point because they're going to see who meets these basic qualifications. And again, why it's really important to pay attention to make sure you're applying for the right grade level and that you're applying for positions that meet whatever you qualify for. So that idea that I was saying about open to the public versus status candidates. Once they weed out all the individuals that do not meet the minimum qualifications, they're going to then look at who's left, and they're going to evaluate further. So this is the point where they might send you a follow-up questionnaire, or they might send you some sort of follow-up assessment. And then from that, then they're going to place the individuals into what we call quality categories, okay? And you really want to be in the highly qualified category. That's where you want to be because it's from that bucket that agencies then decide who they want to refer to the hiring manager. And this is where it becomes like what you're probably used to, where individuals are, referred to the hiring manager and then you may get an interview, okay? And that's, again, sort of where it becomes like the process that you might be used to in other sectors. Now, just a quick note is that say you were to be made a tentative offer, jobs in the federal government often require anywhere from a basic background investigation to a security clearance. And that's going to depend on the type of job that you're hired into. So, for example, my job at OPM, I had to do a background investigation. If you're hired into an agency that works with classified information or sensitive information, then it might be a more involved security clearance. What was great about when I started is that I completed a preliminary check and then they allowed me to start on the job, and then they completed my full background investigation after I'd already started. So I didn't necessarily have to wait to start while they were finishing that work. So, we've gone through all this information, and I realize that it's a little bit overwhelming. And I also realize that you're probably saying, well, why would I want to go through this? Why would I want to go through all these, what seems like additional steps when I can go in the private sector and maybe hand someone a resume and get a job? And I would tell you that it's because I think that the benefits of it are worth it. When you're able to land that first opportunity, all the time and the energy that you've put in on the front end become worth it because you're able to do something that truly makes a difference and something that truly makes an impact in the lives of our country and the people that we serve. So I think that's sort of the big takeaway. And I would also tell you that I think by attending today, you'll have more information and resources so that you'll know these things and you'll know where to spend your time, how to tailor your application, so that hopefully it seems a little bit less overwhelming. Now, if I can leave you with just a few summary tips, I would tell you to make sure that you plan ahead. If you are looking for a job after you received your degree, I usually, as a baseline, tell students this. I say, in the fall semester, into the very beginning of the winter, get your materials ready. Get your resume up to date, maybe do a couple different versions of your resume, get your USA Jobs profile set up, and then really spend the winter up until the time that you graduate actually applying for positions. We're working again as part of hiring reform to decrease the time that it takes to hire for federal positions, but we're working on that. We hope that it'll get even better as things go on, but just prepare yourselves that it might be a little bit longer than what you might be used to in other sectors. Really select carefully and use that tailored application. I feel like I can't emphasize it enough. Really, this idea of quality over quantity. Use a resume and an application that's tailored to the job or the type of job, and that will help set you apart from individuals that don't do that. And then, again, don't be afraid to follow up with the point of contact on a job announcement or an agency. Use the exhibit hall today to really find out about the different agencies here and the kinds of works they're doing and what kind of opportunities they may have available. So I hope that this has been helpful to you. I hope that you'll take the resources and the tools and the information that I've given you today, and I hope that you'll take that and you'll turn that into action and apply for a federal job. I think that the federal government is, like my director said, a really great place to work, and I hope that I've inspired some of you to consider that path.